Hey everybody, this is Tracy here with another edition of A View from Tracy's Point. And yes, I am giving you guys a live video. Okay, well y'all can actually see my face, okay? I know y'all tired of the water scenes, but I think I mentioned before, first of all, it's really, really hot where I live at. And second of all, it takes a lot to set up this camera, set up the lighting, and then the lighting is extremely hot, so it adds to the heat. And I have high ceilings in my house, and I have a black roof. And when I was getting my roof installed, the roofer told me, ma'am, you do not want a black roof because it draws heat. It's going to be harder to cool your house. Your light bill is going to be astronomical. He says, if you had trees, like a lot of shade going on your property, it would be one thing. He says, but I'm telling you, you're going to regret this. And honey, I need to call that man and tell that man. I mean, I've had the roof over 10 years now, but the heat that we are experiencing this year is different from heat we have had in the past. And so that's why you guys haven't been getting a lot of live videos, because it just takes too much. Okay. But after, the last videos that I did, on the whole Don Russell, Michael Williams, and Richard Arlen case, I read those to you guys and I comment on them as I'm reading them. But then I go back afterwards and read them for myself to get a better understanding of what's going on. And so I felt the need to come back and do another video for several reasons. One, to clarify some things that I said in those videos when I posted them as I was reading the indictments. Two, because Don Russell actually had two indictments, but that Don Russell reading of his indictment was almost an hour long. And so I said I wasn't going to do the second indictment. And then I remembered, oh God, you never did read the second indictment to them. And then, the other reason is that I picked up on some things, okay? And then, of course, you guys brought some stuff to my attention and that I feel I need to address. So if I seem like I'm all over the place, it's because I have this thought out in my mind how this conversation is going to go, but I also had to write down some notes to make sure I didn't forget anything. And so the first thing I want to start with is Steve Greenberg was on Court TV the other night. And he did an interview, okay, and he's talking about these 3 arrests that took place and how they have nothing to do with his client. But the thing that annoyed me about Steve in that interview is that he never brought up the fact that this is happening probably because Mr. Kelly has an appeals hearing coming up on September 4th, where, our appeals team is going to go in and argue for him to get a bond. And we just feel that all of this coming down, right now is really a diversion to keep him from getting bond. And he didn't talk about the fact that the whole Don Russell thing is from way back in December of 2018. And the fact that Don has spoken to the feds, several times months ago. And why didn't they bring this up months ago, when it first happened? Like, why were they holding on to this information, until now to release this information that this happened? And then he didn't really go into detail, which I kind of understand because, once you start saying things, then you have to come back, you say one thing and then they come back and you find out that they have more information that they didn't release in these indictments. And so I do kind of understand why he didn't go into saying, with the Richard Arlen guy, like, his client knew nothing about this bribe. He didn't tell anybody to try and offer anybody money. And then with the Michael Williams, he could have easily pointed out the fact that the car that was set on fire was not Azriel's car. That was a car that was leased or rented by Angelo. Okay, so why is it being assumed that this person was coming after Azriel when the car that was set on fire didn't belong to her? It actually, was rented by the father. It didn't belong to either one of them. Or point out the fact that it was mighty convenient that there were multiple cars in the driveway, but the one car that caught on fire was not registered to Azriel and did not belong to Azriel. Okay. And then we talked about how we thought that it was actually a car that caught on fire, but they were saying that it was an SUV. And so when I went back and looked at the pictures, and I forgot to mention this in that video, because I actually used the picture in the thumbnail for that video, and you can see that that car wasn't like a small SUV or a mini SUV. It wasn't a sedan. Okay. So then the second thing is, before I get into my other topics, I'm going to go ahead and read the second indictment for Don Russell that I forgot to read to you guys the other night. And this indictment was actually from the Southern District of New York. So the indictment that I read to you was from the Eastern District of New York, and it was dated March 9th. This indictment from the Southern District of New York is dated March 11th. So let's go ahead. And it was a little bit more interesting than that other indictment, okay? So this one, let me go back up here, United States versus Donnell Russell. It was a sealed complaint. And like I said, Southern District of New York, and it says Carrie C. Cowden, Special Agent, Federal Bureau of Investigations, being duly sworn, charges as follow. And believe it or not, they actually used the FBI instead of Homeland Security. So it says count 1, conspiracy to threaten physical harm by interstate communication. It says 1, on or about December 4th, 2018, in the Southern District of New York and elsewhere, Donnell Russell, the defendant, and others known and unknown, willfully and knowingly did combine, conspire, confederate, and agree together and with each other to commit an offense against the United States, to wit, threatening physical harm by interstate communication in violation of Title 18 United States Code 875. And so when they're talking about interstate communication, we'll learn later on in this indictment that Don was not in New York. He was actually in Chicago, but he was communicating with someone via phone who was in Chicago, and who was in New York, I'm sorry. So 2, it was a part and object of the conspiracy that Donnell Russell, the defendant, and others known and unknown placed an interstate telephone call to threaten physical harm to those attending a December 4th, 2018 screening of SRK at a venue in New York called Newhouse, Madison Square. And then they have in parentheses that further in this indictment, they will be referring to this building as Newhouse. And it says, in violation of Title 18 United States Code 875C. And then overt acts. 3, in furtherance of the conspiracy and to effect the illegal object thereof, the following overt acts, among others, were committed in the Southern District of New York and elsewhere. And then A, on or about December 4th, 2018, Russell placed an interstate telephone call to Newhouse, threatening physical harm to those at the theater and attending the December 4th, 2018 screening of SRK. B, on or about December 4th, 2018, Russell attempted to block his phone number and place a call from his cell phone to a New York City Police Department, you will be known as NYPD in the rest of the indictment, precinct located in New York, and in the vicinity of the theater set to screen SRK. Count 2, threatening physical harm by interstate communication. 4, on or about December 4th, 2018, in the Southern District of New York and elsewhere, Donnell Russell, the defendant, unlawfully, knowingly, and intentionally did transmit in interstate and foreign commerce a communication containing a threat to injure the person or another, to wit, Russell placed an interstate telephone call to Newhouse in New York, threatening physical harm to those attending the December 4th, 2018 screening. Some SRK at Newhouse and aided and abetted the same. The basis for my knowledge and the foregoing charges are in part as follows. 5, I am a special agent with the Federal Bureau of Investigation, FBI. During my tenure as a special agent with the FBI, I have conducted and participated in numerous investigations of criminal activity, including but not limited to threats in violation of Title 18 United States Code Sections 875 and 2. Overview. 6. Since in or about January 2019, law enforcement has been investigating the involvement of Donnell Russell, the defendant and then manager for music recording artist Robert Sylvester Kelly, better known as R. Kelly, in a coordinated effort, including through the use of threats or violence, to prevent the screening in December 2018 of a multi-part documentary or docuseries entitled Surviving R. Kelly, entitled SRK, at Newhouse, a theater in New York. The screening, the docuseries, explores allegations about Mr. Kelly. 7, specifically and as detailed below, throughout the day of the screening, Donnell Russell, the defendant, who was at and around his residence in Chicago, Illinois, worked with, among others, another individual associated with Mr. Kelly, who will be referred to as CC-1, who was in New York the day of the screening to draft correspondence to an executive at the Lifetime television channel, discouraging the executive from airing the docuseries. Additionally, Russell admitted that he sent Newhouse a cease and desist letter to stop the screening from going forward. When that failed to stop the screening, Russell used 2 different cell phones under his control, attempted to contact various law enforcement agencies in and around the theater, seemingly in a further effort to disrupt the screening. Finally, Russell contacted Newhouse directly via a landline associated with his home address to threaten that there was a person in the theater with a gun prepared to shoot up the screening. And then they have in parentheses the threat call. At and around the time the threat call was placed, Russell texted CC-1 that the cops may be coming soon. After receiving the threat call, the Newhouse employee called 911. Newhouse canceled the screening and evacuated the theater. Moreover, to conceal his involvement in the scheme, Russell directed CC-1 to delete his text message to CC-1 regarding the police arriving at Newhouse. Okay, relevant phone numbers. 8. Based on my participation in this investigation, including my review of phone records and search warrant returns, I have learned the following, among other things. A. Donnell Russell, the defendant, is the primary user of a cell phone assigned a call number ending in 5608, which would be known as the Russell cell phone, and a cell phone assigned a call number ending in 3030, which will further be referred to as Indy Bill Corp cell phone. And you guys know Indy Bill is his company. Russell is also the account holder listed on a landline phone associated with Russell's home address in Chicago, Illinois, which will be referred to as Russell Landline. And then B, CC1 is the primary user of 2 cell phones, one assigned a call number ending in 8553, which will be referred to as CC1 cell phone 1, and one assigned a call number ending in 5659, which will be referred to as CC1 cell phone 2, collectively the CC1 cell phones. Okay, the day of the screening. 9, based on publicly available sources, interviews with, among others, the employee of Newhouse, and my review of documents obtained from Newhouse, I have learned that on or about December 4th, 2018, Newhouse, in collaboration with the Lifetime television channel, was scheduled to host the premiere screening of SRK, the docuseries, and it talks about what the docuseries was about. Guests to the screening were expected to arrive at Newhouse at approximately 6:30 p.m. on December 4th. The screening was to occur from approximately 7 p.m. to 8:30 p.m. with a panel discussion about the docuseries to be held following the screening. The participants in the panel discussion were to include certain alleged victims of Mr. Kelly, who, based on my review of phone records, I have learned that while Russell is, and then these are notes on the same page, and I'll pick up where that last paragraph was going. Let me see if there's anything in here that I really need to read. They're talking about the phone records. Okay, so they're basically pointing out information about the phone records. So to pick up where I left off, it says that appear in the docuseries. So 10, based on my participation in the investigation, including my review of phone records, cell site records for the CC1 cell phones, a witness interview, and my review of search warrant returns, I have learned that CC1 and a relative of CC1 were in New York the day of the screening. Cease and desist email to Newhouse. Okay, number 11. Based on my participation in the investigation, including my review of phone records, interviews with, among others, blah, blah, blah. And he says this at the start of each section, so no need to keep reading that. So A, from approximately 9:12 a.m. to approximately 2:47 p.m., Donnell Russell, the defendant, and CC1 communicated repeatedly using the Russell cell phone and Russell landline and they say CC1 cell phone 1 and by email. In substance and in part, Russell and CC1 discussed sending an email to an executive for original programming at Lifetime. And then they go in to talk about, who this person was, the production of SRK. B, approximately 6:16 p.m. to approximately 7:06 p.m., Russell, who was at and near his residence in Chicago at the time, called the number for the Newhouse reception desk, which is available on the internet using the Russell cell phone and the IndieBill Corp cell phone. For example, at approximately 6:18 p.m., the IndieBill Corp cell phone called Newhouse. That call lasted approximately 6 minutes and 38 seconds. Oh, and then going back to the A portion where I say they keep saying the same thing, they did add in that section, it says, by now, I'm certain you and your production team have met the acquaintance of the alleged survivors and had ample time to witness the character of each woman and or parent individually. So this was part of the email that was drafted to go to the executive at Lifetime. So then in C, it says, based on the interview of an individual working for Newhouse, employee 1, on the evening of December 4th, 2018, I am aware that employee 1 answered a phone call at Newhouse from the IndieBill Corp cell phone at approximately the time detailed on subparagraph B above, On that call, a person claiming to represent Mr. Kelly informed employee 1 that he intended to serve a cease and desist letter on Newhouse to prevent the screening of SRK. The caller stated in substance and in part that the caller was a representative of Mr. Kelly and that Newhouse was to cease and desist in its screening of the docuseries. D. Subsequently, at approximately 6:58 p.m., a cease and desist letter was emailed to Newhouse from a person purporting to be an attorney, demanding in substance and in part that Newhouse not go forward with the screening. Russell asked CC1 if the screening is going forward. So number 12, once again, I tell you guys that this FBI agent starts each section basically saying who he is. So we can skip over that. Okay, so number 12, that's him talking. Then it says, A, at approximately 6:59 p.m., a cell phone associated with a relative of CC1 called Newhouse. B, at approximately 7:01 p.m., the Russell cell phone called Newhouse. And then C, from approximately 7:03 p.m. to 7:05 p.m., the Russell cell phone and CC1 cell phone 1 were in communication by text and voice calls. For example, at approximately 7:04 p.m., after the cease and desist letter had been sent as described above, the Russell cell phone texted CC1, cell phone 1, are they continuing with the screening? CC1 replied, yes. As noted above, at the time, CC1 was in New York. So Russell calls the NYPD and the New York Fire Department seemingly in an effort to disrupt the screening. Now, y'all, if doing too much was a person, it was Don Russell on December 4th, 2018. So 13, based on the FBI agent's experience, and then he goes on, A, at approximately 7:12 p.m., the Indy Bill cell phone called a number for the NYPD Midtown South Precinct. I have learned that the NYPD Midtown South Precinct is located approximately 1.4 miles away from Newhouse. B, at approximately 7:14 p.m., the Russell cell phone called a number for the NYPD Transit District 4 Precinct. And it says, I have learned that the NYPD Transit District 4 Precinct is approximately 0.6 miles away from Newhouse. I have also learned that before making that call, Russell attempted to block his number by dialing *67. I'm sorry, y'all. I thought it was #67. I don't know. I didn't even know they worked on cell phones, whichever one it is. But it says, based on my training and experience in analyzing phone records and my review of publicly available websites, I know that dialing *67 before making a call blocks the recipient of the call from seeing the number that made the call on the recipient's caller identification device. Historical call site information for the Russell cell phone shows that the Russell cell phone was at or near Russell's residence in Chicago on the evening of December 4th, 2018, and therefore Russell was not in New York or in a location where the NYPD could be of assistance. C, at approximately 7:23 p.m., the Indy Bill Corp cell phone called a number for the Fire Bell Club of New York, the Fire Bell Club of New York phone number, which is an organization associated with the New York City Fire Department and is located approximately 0.3 miles from Newhouse. D, at approximately 7:25 p.m., the Indy Bill Corp cell phone called a number for the New York City Fire Department headquarters. The FDNY headquarters number is how it will be referred to in the future. E, at approximately 7:27 p.m., the Indy Bill Corp cell phone called the Fire Bell Club of New York number. F. At approximately 7:27 p.m., the Indieville Corp cell phone called 311. Based on my review of publicly available sources, including the New York City website that lists the FDNY headquarters number, I have learned that the 311 is the general number for non-emergency services. Historical cell site information for the Indieville Corp cell phone shows in substance that phone was also located at and around Russell's residence in Chicago at or around the time the calls detailed above were placed. The threat call is made to Newhouse from the Russell landline. 14, based on my review of text messages between CC1 and Donnell Russell, the defendant, obtained by law enforcement, I have learned that on or about December 4th, 2018 at approximately 7:36 p.m., Russell, using the Russell cell phone, texted CC1 in substance, "The cops may be arriving shortly." 15, based on publicly available sources, interviews with, among others, an employee of Newhouse and my review of documents obtained from Newhouse, I have learned the following in substance and in part. At approximately 7:37 p.m., employee 1 received a phone call at Newhouse from the Russell landline. On that call, an individual said in substance and part that someone at the screening had a gun and was going to shoot up the place. By the time the threat call, guests had already arrived for the screening. Employee 1 relayed the threat to security guards working the event, as well as a manager for Newhouse and a 911 dispatcher. Ultimately, the screening was canceled and guests were evacuated from the scene. No shooting ever occurred. B. Based on my participation in this investigation, including in review of phone records, I have learned in substance and in part that on December 4, 2018, at approximately 7:37 p.m. and 7:38 p.m., the Russell landline placed 2 phone calls to Newhouse. The first phone call lasted approximately 23 seconds, and the second call lasted approximately 20 seconds. Based on an interview of employee 1, I believe that one of these calls was the threat call described above. As discussed above, historical cell site information for the Russell cell phone places the Russell cell phone at or near Russell's residence, and therefore the Russell landline. Communications about the threat call. Y'all, was he doing too much or was he doing too much? Okay. 16, based on my review of text messages between CC1 and Donnell Russell, the defendant, obtained by law enforcement and by review of search warrant returns, I have learned that on or about December 4th, 2018, at approximately 8:05 p.m., Russell, using the Russell cell phone, texted CC1 in substance, "Delete those messages about 50. Based on my training and experience and my participation in this investigation, I believe that 50 is and then that is just a straight line. I don't know what the line means. So then it says, 3, employee 1 indicated that the voice of the person calling in the phone threat sounded different than the voice of the person who had previously called regarding the cease and desist letter. Employee 1 also indicated that he heard a click as if the person was calling from a landline, although he believed the caller who made the threat call may have been outside at the time of the call. Based on my training and experience, I know that cell site data, also known as tower face or tower sector information, reflects the cell tower and sector thereof utilized in routing any communication to and from the cell phone, as well as the approximate range of the cell phone from the tower during the communication. because cell towers are often a half-mile or more apart, even in urban areas, and can be 10 or more miles apart in rural areas. Cell site data can provide general information, but is not as precise as precision location information. Reference to the police. Okay, then those were notes I was just reading. So picking up from, let me start back at the beginning of this sentence. Okay, I believe that 50 is a reference to the police. So I said it was redacted, but actually it was the break line. I'm sorry, guys. It was the break line saying that they were getting ready to start with these notes. So we're going to pick back up where it says that 50 is reference to the police, and that Russell wrote, delete those messages about 50. He was referring to the prior text message that Russell had sent CC1, which stated that the cops may be arriving shortly. Based on my review of the search warrant returns for the Russell cell phone, I believe that in addition to the direction to CC1 described above, Russell deleted those text messages from his own phone prior to the time law enforcement seized the Russell cell phone in July 2019. Based on my participation in the investigation, including my review of phone records and public records, I have learned of the following communication on or about December 4th, 2018, in substance and in part. A, the Russell cell phone placed a phone call that lasted approximately 6 minutes to a cell phone used by Mr. Kelly at approximately 8:53 p.m. B, at approximately 10:26 p.m., the CC1 cell phone 1 texted the Russell cell phone 911 call now. At approximately 10:34 p.m., the Indyville Corp cell phone called CC1 cell phone 2. The call lasted approximately 23 minutes. CC1 cell phone 2 and the Indyville Corp cell phone exchanged phone calls at approximately 11:20 p.m. and 11:48 p.m. 18. Based on my review of search warrant returns for the Russell cell phone, public documents, and law enforcement databases, I have learned that the Russell cell phone has a contact for Russell's mother. I have also learned that on or about December 4th, 2018, at approximately 11:20 p.m., Russell's mother texted the Russell cell phone in substance, quote, be humble when, if you talk to Rob, because you made another move without checking with him first. Even though it was for his benefit, he might not approve of your actions, exclamation point, exclamation point, exclamation point. I have also learned that on or about December 5th, 2019, Russell's mother texted the Russell cell phone in substance, quote, my calls were to tell not to mention the woman's name that is assisting you. Remember, someone in Rob's circle may be a mole, so give her an alias, exclamation point, exclamation point, exclamation point. Based on my participation in the investigation, I believe that Russell's mother was referring to Mr. Kelly when directing Russell to be humble when, if you talk to Rob, and referring to CC1 and the threat scheme described herein when directing Russell to conceal the name of the woman assisting you. Russell and CC1 draft a statement regarding the threat call on December 6 and December 7, 2018. Based on my participation in this investigation, including my review of search warrant returns for the Russell cell phone, I have learned the following, among other things. A, on or about December 6, 2018, CC1 texted the Russell cell phone in substance and in part, quote, you're going to love this plan and this statement I just wrote. End quote. CC1 subsequently texted a statement to the Russell cell phone, which stated in substance and in part, quote, the incident which took place at the recent Lifetime screening was most unfortunate, and we empathize with anyone who was affected by it. However, Mr. Kelly is once again being targeted and accused of acts beyond his control. For months, we have watched as his name has been slandered, and women he once cared for deeply, as well as his family, have attempted to assassinate his character for their own financial gain. As Mr. Kelly's team, we have urged him to speak up, but due to his selfless nature, good moral character, and out of the love and respect he's had for his family and these women, especially his ex-wife and mother of his children, he has not wanted to retaliate, but everyone has their limits. For the record, Mr. Kelly, the artist, would never be muted, and now Robert S. Kelly, the man, will no longer be silenced. The truth will be revealed. Time's up. B. Wasn't that was a message, okay? So B, on December 7, 2018, Russell, using the Russell cell phone, texted CC1 in substance and in part that, quote, he wants to change the last sentence. He likes everything else. But based on my participation in the investigation, I believe that Russell was referring to Mr. Kelly in this message. Russell subsequently texted CC1 in substance and in part. Oh, lost my place. Let me see. In substance and in part, quote, damn, I see I got this one wrong, end quote. CC1 responded in substance and in part, quote, someone who's passionate about genuinely helping could never be the wrong, but I digress, end quote. Based on my training and experience and on my participation in this investigation, I believe that Russell was referring to the threat scheme described above when he said, damn, I see I got this wrong. Okay, then the next section, Russell admits he contacted Newhouse on December 4th, 2018. 20. On or about August 21st, 2019, law enforcement agents conducted a voluntary interview of Donnell Russell, the defendant. After being advised of the identities of the interviewing agents and the nature of the investigation, Russell stated the following in substance and in part. A. Russell wanted to figure out how to stop the docuseries from airing and sent a cease and desist letter to, among others, Lifetime and Newhouse. Russell sent the cease and desist letter to Newhouse using both his personal and business email. B. CC1 was in New York on the day of the screening, and Russell was in contact with CC1 that day, but Russell denied making the threat call to Newhouse. 21. Based on my participation in the investigation, including my review of search warrant returns for an iCloud account belonging to Donnell Russell, the defendant, I have learned of a recording of CC1 speaking about Mr. Kelly. I have learned that on that recording, CC1 said, in substance and in part, hashtag Don got identified as the person who called in the fucking gun threat, which was stupid as fuck, and Rob didn't know shit about it. They said the NYPD traced it back to him, end quote. Wherefore, deponent respectfully requests that a warrant be issued for the arrest of Donnell Russell, the defendant, and that he be arrested and imprisoned or bailed as the case may be. Carrie L. Calnan, Special Agents, Federal Bureau of Investigations. Okay, wow. So, I'm sorry, guys. I love me some tennis, and there's a tennis match going on with Coco Gauff, and I think Coco Gauff lost the match. Okay, so I was reading to y'all. I put y'all above this tennis match. I think Lil Coco lost, but she made it to the semifinals of this tournament that she was in. Okay, so let's go back to my notes. So what I want to say about the Southern District of New York indictment is that Don Russell is not smarter than a fifth grader, okay? He's either not smarter than a fifth grader or he is not smart about technology, which makes no sense because Don's indie build company is an internet-based company, so he has to have internet experts on his team who could tell him like he could have, even if he didn't tell them what he was trying to do, he could have gone to them and asked them certain questions about how information is traced, how cookies are used on the internet. I mean, you guys, we've all experienced where we have, been viewing, a pair of shoes or a purse on a website, and then everywhere we go, that purse or those shoes start popping up, like on Facebook, on our social media presence. I haven't, because I turn all this crap off on my phone. Not to say that they can't still trace what you do, but if they're tracing me, I'm gonna make it a little bit harder for them than these people did. But for example, my daughter and I went to dinner, and there was a Volvo dealership next to the restaurant that we had gone to. And so my daughter, she hopped over the wall and went to look at this Volvo. And it was a specific Volvo that she went to look for. And so then we're driving back home and she's like, oh my God. And I was like, what? She was like, why is that Volvo and the dealership where the Volvo was located at now on my IG stream, like advertising that car to me? And so I told her to go in, and it's something like NFC or NCFE. It's some code in your phone which basically allows them to track all this stuff. When you be signing up all these apps, and not reading the terms and conditions, those apps are telling you that they can access your phone. They can turn your microphone on. They can turn your camera on. They can do pretty much, read your location. And so there are towers. There are things on these stores that you go into that ping off your phone. And that's why you're getting all these retargeting ads through Google. It's a mess, y'all. It's a mess. So Don probably has people at his disposal that could have told him, if he had phrased the questions correctly, could have told him whatever he needed to know. And then there is the internet. And it's like, if I'm getting ready to call the police and, call in some threats and all this kind of stuff, I'm probably going to Google and say, how easy would it be for the police to reach back, to trace this back to me? And I just think common sense in the digital era that we live in, that everybody should understand how easy it is for phone calls to be traced. And so it just made absolutely no sense that he did all of this and thought it was okay. And so in this indictment, they talk about CC1, and we know that CC1 is a woman. And I think at this point, we all know that CC1 is Kash Jones or whatever. I know Kash is not her real name. Her name does begin with a K, I believe, but I can't think of it right now. But we know her as Kash Jones. And so we know that Kash Jones was working with Don. We know that Kash Jones was also in a relationship with Angelo Clary. And it was a fairish type relationship, not just a friendship. And so the fact that she was working both sides of the fence has me asking, why isn't Kash Jones being arrested? Okay, what is her real role in all of this? And we all need to be asking these questions because Kash Jones is CC1 in both of Don's indictments in Eastern District of New York and the Southern District of New York. Kash Jones is individual 1 in the Mike Williams indictment. And remember, Mike Williams is her cousin, and he's the one that allegedly set fire to this car, which makes it more palatable that the target was not Azriel's car. The target was Angelo's car, because if you guys remember, Angelo and Kash fell out, right? Because I guess Kash went public with their affair. And remember, he was so angry, and in one of his many rants late night on Instagram, he went off on Kash, called her all kind of names, saying that people are going to be surprised when the truth comes out about Kash. Well, it looks like that truth is coming out now. So not only was Kash, pretending to be working, for Mr. Kelly when we know she probably wasn't, and working with Don to supposedly help him, she was riding the fence because she's over there, doing whatever with Angelo. Then she's also individual number 1 in the Richard Arlen indictment. So she, and I think it was something I had wrote down, and I don't think it's on this piece of paper, but in that indictment, it says that Kash and, individual 1 and Richard Arlen went to school together. Okay, so I don't know if they meant they went to like high school together, to college together, but at some point in time, they know each other personally and have known each other for years. Okay, so now she is the least common denominator in all of these. She's in each one of these indictments, knowing Mike Williams, knowing Richard Arlen, knowing Don Williams, and then we know that she knows Angelo. And so why is Kash not being charged? And so we have Don's mom saying, we believe there is a mole in Mr. Kelly's camp. Okay, so now we know the mole is Kash Jones. Then my next thought was, so a lot of, reading the comments, you guys know I do read all of my comments on all of my videos. And so people were saying that, and then a couple of people even emailed me, and then I've seen some other things floating around where people are arguing that Don is really for Mr. Kelly, that he has his bag, he was really trying to help. And so I entitled one of my videos, With Friends Like This, Who Needs Enemies? A person can be your friend or think that they're your friend and think that they're helping you, but they're really hurting you. Because in my opinion, and I did this on this video that I did back in May of last year, where I talked about another person who claimed to be Mr. Kelly's friend, but was acting anything but friendly. So you can go back and find that video, and it's called What About Your Friends? Okay, a friend wants only the best for you. Your friends want to uplift you. Your friends want you to be seen in the most positive light. And I use myself as an example so you guys know that I have a couple of books out. Okay, I don't talk about my books, but here they are, if you don't believe me. Here's 2 of them. One of them I took off the market that I'm going to redo. But there were people who were my friends who read my first book, which is the one I took off the market, who told me how much they loved the book. The book was so great. Oh, girl, you're really gifted. You're really talented, right? So those were my friends. They wanted the best for me. But then I had another friend, okay, who came to me and said, girl, you're a gifted writer. I'm so proud of you. I'm so happy for you. But here's the name of some editors. You need to get your books edited. You need to get them polished. You need to get them cleaned up. That's the kind of friend I want. I want that friend that's going to say to me, girl, check yourself. Not that friend who's going to boost me up and say, I'm doing all these great things. You're doing these great things, but not willing to tell me where, I'm slipping, where I'm lacking, what I can do to better myself. And so Don may be a friend. He may care about Mr. Kelly, and all that good stuff, but he was not working in his best interest. There is no way on this planet that a rational-minded person would have thought that doing all of this, because he was doing way too much, doing all of this was somehow going to help Rob. There's no way he could have thought that any of this was not going to come back at some point. There's no way that in 2019, a person doesn't have the wherewithal to know that their actions are damaging and could have damaged other people. So that is why I say to everybody who's reached out to me and said, you know, Don is really his friend. Don really cares about him. Don was really trying to help him, that there's just some help you don't need. If your man is kicking your behind, you don't need a friend to come over and console you and tell you, girl, well, don't do this, don't do that. You need a friend. See, I'm that friend you call and tell me he kicking your behind. I'm calling 911 and I'm going to meet the police at your house so we can get him out your house. That's the friend I am. I'm not that friend that's going to come in and console you and tell you, well, he's a good man. He's a good provider. He's a good father to the kids. So, you know, just try not to do the things that upset him, that makes him want to beat you. I'm not that friend, okay? And so to me, Don was being that friend that was saying, okay, man, I hate that all these horrible things are happening to you, but I'm going to go in and try and fix it, when in essence, he made it all worse. What else do I have here? Okay. Then I noticed that now that the mainstream media is picking up this story, I read 3 stories today from like CBS, ABC, and maybe CNN, and they're all talking about Don Russell's case, but they're not talking about the car fire. They're not talking about the bribe. That's like a paragraph at the end of this long story where they're talking about Don's case. So once again, you know, really hurt him more. Let's see, cease and desist. Okay, let's talk about that. They're talking about issuing the cease and desist, and we hear people all the time talking about cease and desist, cease and desist. Let me tell you this, okay, from the publishing industry. Cease and desist don't work. People don't have to respond to your cease and desist. You can send a cease and desist all you want to. Most people pay them no attention, and the reason why, because you send a cease and desist and you threaten a lawsuit if the person doesn't stop what they're doing. Okay, you file a lawsuit against that person doesn't have to prove that what they said or did about you is true. You have to prove that it's not true. And how do you prove that it's not true? You have to expose yourself. Like if that person said, I'll give you a good example. Jamal Bryant was was floating around the social media circuit a couple of months ago, and it was actually Mother's Day weekend. There was a story that came out that said that Jamal Bryant had fathered a child with a member of New Birth. And you guys know he's only been at New Birth for like a year and a half. So they're saying that he done hooked up with this woman, got her pregnant, the woman gave birth, blah, 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 right? So Jamal does a video presentation where he announces that he sent these cease and desist letters to all these bloggers that were covering that story, right? And that they had better take this stuff down or they will be served with a lawsuit within 24 hours or 48 hours or whatever time period. So a couple of bloggers, out of respect, took the story down. But there were other bloggers that left their story up. And not only did they leave the story up, they kept talking about it. And the reason why is they wanted Jamal Bryant to sue them so that Jamal Bryant would then have to come into court and prove that whoever this woman was that they were saying baby was his, he would have to prove that the baby wasn't his. And how would he prove that the baby wasn't his but to do a DNA test on that woman's child? And the DNA test comes back and says, you're not the father. Then he could sue those bloggers for telling that tale on their blog sites, right? who's going to do that? Especially if there is some validity, like maybe he did sleep with the woman, okay? Or who wants to go with the embarrassment of having to do yet another DNA test when you have already been caught cheating and fathering children in your marriage, okay? So that's why cease and desist letters don't work, because he served a cease and desist letter on Lifetime, who feels that they have all this information that they claim they vetted. Then you do a cease and desist and they're like, oh yeah, well, we welcome the opportunity for Mr. Kelly to come in and dispute, because now we're going to have him on record. So you guys get where I'm going. So the cease and desist was stupid to begin with. And he should have known that a network, Lifetime is owned by A&E. A&E owns multiple networks. They have legal teams. They have billions of dollars to fight a lawsuit. So why would they pay any attention? Like, that was so stupid. And then I don't know if he just got caught up in the moment and then started calling the police department and the fire department. Like, had he lost his mind at that point? So, child, that was just crazy. So then, let's see, what else did I want to talk about? I talked about him being a business owner and he should have known better. Okay, so then they talk about this letter. You remember the letter that was sent to the networks? I think was the cease and desist. And then there's also the letter that was sent to Faith Rogers' attorney, the Lydia Hill lady, that allegedly had Rob's signature on it, right? And so my thing is, did Rob sign the letter, or was the signature forged? And the reason I'm asking that question is, if you're my good friend, okay, and I care about you and I'm working to help you, and I know that you can't, you have trouble reading, you have limited reading skills, what have you, I'm not going to give you a letter. I know that people have manipulated and taken advantage of you through the years. I'm not going to give you a letter and say, hey, Rob, sign this letter. No, as a friend, I'm going to give you the letter, and I'm going to have a copy of the letter, and I'm going to read that letter to you. Okay, so you know exactly what the letter says, so you know what you're signing, so that you can make a decision, because I know that you've been hurt and burned so many times in the past. I'm going to read that letter to you. We're going to talk about what this letter means, and then I'm going to ask you to sign the letter. So I think unless Mr. Kelly doesn't learn that quickly from past experiences, I'm thinking he didn't sign that letter. That letter was forged. That's what I'm hoping, okay? I'm just going to roll with this. It's my thought process of what's going on. And so, and then I already talked about Kash and Angelo's connection, because I think Angelo would have been in New York, right? So maybe that's why Kash was in New York the night of the screening, since that was her boo thing, right? And then we know that at some point they fell out. And then, like in one of the other indictments, they actually talk about Angelo being interviewed by the feds in December of last year, when Azriel, supposedly had her awakening and left. But we know that Azriel had been home since November. So he went to talk to the feds, and C1 was with him. So once again, Angelo and Kash still in cahoots as of December 2019. Was burning the car about, okay, I already talked about whether or not it was Angelo that they were after and not Azriel. And then let's go back to I-1 through I-5, and then I'm going to get into this next part. So my summation in the Richard Arlen case of all these individuals that were connected. So this is my final list, and unless y'all got something different. Okay, I-1 is Kash Jones. I-2, I still believe is Keith. I-3, I believe is Will. And you guys know that Will went silent, like he was doing videos, talking about his friend, talking about Mr. Kelly, talking about, he didn't know when his turn was going to come up on the visitation list, because if you guys remember, he could only have one person that wasn't a relative. And so he decided that he was going to visit with Azriel for 90 days. And when the 90 days was up, he would visit with Joy. And then that's when Azriel flipped the script, because she wanted him not to visit with Joy. She wanted him to get rid of Joy and keep her on the visitation list. So once we realized that there was only one spot for a non-family member, Will realized that he wasn't going to get to go visit him, right? So he would still talk about him. He would talk about communications with him and everything. And then all of a sudden, Will just stopped. Like, we didn't hear nothing else. And I'm going to be honest with you, Will stopped talking right around the time that the girlfriend went on IG and said that Will had gave her this Lexus or Mercedes or something. And I jokingly said to somebody, oh, let me find out that Will then gave one of Rob's cars to his girlfriend. And I was just joking about it. Nothing to prove that whatsoever. And then that was around the time Will stopped talking. But now I'm thinking, Will stop talking because of the whole Richard Arlen situation, where they out here trying to offer people money. He didn't want to be associated with that. You know, he's already had his own legal troubles around financing. So I can understand him stepping back and saying, let y'all have that. Leave me alone. Leave me out of this. I want no parts of this. So I believe that I3 is Will, and I believe that this whole thing is why he stopped talking and removed himself from the situation. I4, I still believe, is Brian Nix. Okay, and Brian Nix, you guys know, is an attorney, and he's an attorney that worked for Rob, and I believe he was brought on by Don Russell. And remember, in the previous videos, I told you guys that Brian Nix stepped in when the Middle Eastern guys, I can't think of their names, Habib and whoever that law firm was that was representing him in the Heather Williams case. And they would show up at all of his court hearings with Steve Greenberg and everything. And so Brian picked the case up in March because they defaulted because Rob had 30 days after they resigned to tell the courts who his new counsel was. He didn't file for new counsel. And so they did a default motion. But then Brian Nix stepped in and said he was going to represent Rob. He asked for a continuance. He asked them to, set aside the default, which was the second default in this case. But then COVID hit. The judge, for whatever reason, removed herself from that case. And where it stands now, I haven't checked in the past few weeks, but where it stands as the last time I checked on it was that they were waiting on a judge to be assigned, and I believe it was taking so long because of the whole COVID situation. And once the courts fully reopen, they'll assign a new judge. And then also Heather Williams has changed her demand from $50,000 to now she wants $400,000. And the last ruling in that case was that she had to justify $400,000 in damage for them to even consider that. So that's why I think I4 is Brian Nix. Okay, I5, I was joking around, y'all, in my last video where I said, well, maybe it's Dr. Rice. It's either Dr. Rice or it's Dawn. I don't know. So when I went back and reread the indictment, I realized I missed one word in that paragraph. I thought that paragraph was saying that the person was on YouTube doing interviews about Rob. Okay, and that's why I said Don Russell. But I knew that the interview that they were talking about with Keith was Dr. Rice, okay? But then when I went back and read the paragraph says that this individual conducted interviews, okay, that was supportive of Mr. Kelly, okay? So we know that I5 is Dr. Rice. And then we also know I5 is Dr. Rice because Dr. Rice and he called in on another YouTuber's channel. And on that, he was basically defending himself, and he provided a voice recording where he said that he recorded a phone call between him, I1, and the Richard Arlen guy. I think it was a 3-way call or something. Okay. We know I-1 is Kash Jones. Okay. We know Richard Arlen, was trying to make this deal with Azriel. We don't know who asked him to make the deal or whatever. Now, the problem that I had with the recording that Dr. Rice provided was that there was, first of all, we didn't get the whole conversation. We only got a portion of the conversation that he wanted to present, to this YouTuber. But there was a lot of spaces that were muted out in the conversation. And he said they were muted out because he was mentioning people's names and he didn't want those names to get out. However, the muted portions, so it wasn't like it takes 1 second to say Tracy. So it was a 1 second blank, okay? There were long blanks as though he was actually speaking sentences. And so when you go to muting out information, then it changes the whole context of the conversation. So I will say this, that once again, Dr. Rice is an educated man. He says he has a doctorate in counseling or something, and just should have known better. Don't be talking to people on the phone about this case when y'all know that they are out to get this man. And so, in his defense, he says that he was trying to talk to Azriel, I guess trying to get an interview or something, because he mentions Dominique and how, he sat down with Dominique and Dominique wants to write a book and he was going to help her write this book or whatever. I don't know. Okay. I don't know why anybody would be trying to talk to Azriel. I don't know why anybody would be trying to reason with Azriel, because she does not seem to be a reasonable person. Okay. So now he's caught up in this mess. And, it may just be the same way as Kevin Terrell, where they mention him in the indictment, but they ain't really thinking about him, okay? So they mentioned Dr. Rice in this indictment. They obviously ain't really thinking about him. They were just using, whatever happened to build their case against this Richard Arlen guy. Whew, child. Okay, so that's that. So that's my official list. Kash Jones, Keith, Will, Brian Nix, Dr. Rice. That's who I got. Okay. Then it was also mentioned when I went back and reread the indictments. You guys remember the Eastern District of New York pointed out that at some point that Rob had made a phone call, that one of the employees at the prison let him make a phone call on a phone that was not monitored, that's not recorded. So in one of the notes at the bottom, one of the pages, we learned that Azriel told the feds that, when she was still with Rob, that he made a phone call. He was allowed to make a phone call from a BOP staff member's office. And so that's where that comes from. So Azriel told that one time he called her, one of them staff members let him call her from their phone. Now, why she would be trying to get the staff member in trouble, I don't know. But that just shows how ruthless she is. She doesn't care about anybody but herself, okay? And then people keep asking, why is Rob being denied bail and these other folks got bail? I know Don is out on bail. And I shared you guys the transcript from the hearing that he had, the bail hearing that he had. Basically, he's leaving California, headed back to Chicago. He's going to drive from California to Chicago. He can't have contact with any of the witnesses in the case, any of the alleged victims in the case. He can't travel to Florida and he cannot travel to Nevada. And so we know that Florida is where Azriel lives. Florida is where Angelo lives. Okay. So then Nevada, people were asking, well, what was the connection to Nevada? So Nevada could be several things. You guys remember when Azriel told the lie about buying a house in Las Vegas or somewhere. So that's Nevada. Milton Brown, who is one of the defendants in the Northern District of Illinois case, lives in Las Vegas or Nevada, somewhere in Nevada. And then we got, confidential informant Larry, who also lives in Nevada. So maybe they don't want him talking to none of them. Okay, so he can't talk to nobody in Nevada, nobody in Florida. He can not be on social media, and he can only travel, to court cases in California, in New York, and he can go to Newark because evidently to get to wherever he needs to get to in New York, he may have to fly into Newark. And so he can go Chicago, Newark, and New York. Okay. So I think the reason Don got bond is because they see him as an asset. They obviously see him as being not too bright, and they probably think he's going to slip up again and make a phone call or a text message he has no business. He may be working with them because think about this. These investigations were in... So think about it. These investigations started, well, the warrants were written or the indictments were written in March. Okay. They said that they met with Don in, let me go back and see here. They met with Don several times, I think last year. Right, so I think they said they met with Don, or maybe it was this year they met with, no, I think they said they met with Don a couple of times last year, and then this warrant was written in, remember they say he voluntarily came in and talked with them. So you figure all this time has passed since they first talked with him. Then they talked with him again this year. And so was he letting Rob know about these meetings that he had with the feds, to have talked to the feds and then come on YouTube and go around the YouTube circuit doing these interviews knowing that you had talked to the feds? Like, did he mention to anybody in any of the interviews? I know he talked about they thought he had done these things, at the SRK screening, but I don't recall him ever saying that he had actually done them, that he did it, for Rob's good. I don't recall him coming out doing, an interview saying that he had talked to the feds, that this was an ongoing investigation. I don't remember him talking about there being a sealed indictment or anything like that. And so to me, that's a level of deception because you're going around trying to sell a story to this man's supporters, who are looking for any bit of hope to hold on to, that things are going to work in his favor. So to me, that's deception within itself. And so, I'm not going to say he wasn't his friend, that he didn't think that he was working in his best interest, but I just think that, these are supposed to be like, how did you become a millionaire without thinking things through? How did you not just see how damaging this would be to him once all this came out? And then I would think that if I knew I was under investigation because I know that I did what these people are alleging that I did, I just don't think I would have been on social media talking to anybody, trying to do anything. And I mean, maybe I just think differently, but I just think that if he knew all of this was going on behind the scenes, why come out, trying, holding up documents to the screen, showing all this stuff that you have of his, these personal artifacts that you have. Why do all of that, to try and prove to the audiences, that you do have this relationship with him? Like, none of it makes sense, but I'm waiting to see what the Kash Jones effect is. And at what point is Kash Jones going to end up in an indictment of her own? Because she obviously is playing both sides of the fence. She has no loyalty to anyone. Not sure why she's inserting herself. And I never did read, evidently she wrote a book about Y'all tell me if I'm wrong in the comments. So the book that she wrote is supposed to be the blueprint for all the other books that all the other alleged victims wrote. But her book was all fiction. Like that right there lets you know something is wrong with her, that she took the time out of her life to write a whole book about this man's alleged incidents, things that he allegedly did, which caused all these other women to come out the woodwork and write their own books, pretty much copying and pasting what she wrote. And then all of a sudden, now you're the publicist and you're working to help him, but you're also working with the other side. Child, it's just too much. Okay, so I know this video is over an hour long at this point because my camera even got tired and fell off the tripod. So let me go ahead, y'all, and close this out. I think that was everything that I wanted to talk about. Leave your comments below. I love reading you guys' comments. Some of y'all be making me think about things a little bit deeper, and I appreciate that. Rate the video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already, and share the video if you feel inclined to do so. And until the next time, enjoy your weekend, and I shall talk to you guys later. Bye-bye.